Well, hey there, everyone. We're live. We're not on air yet, but we're getting ready to go on air. So, welcome as you gather. Good to see you.
Ellery.
So, we're coming up on going live. I think Field Guy's here. And that's it so far. How you doing, Field Guy? Ah. Boom, boom, boom. Doug Stack, how you doing? Hey, Donna, how are you? Good to see you here tonight. Glad you made it in. Hi. We haven't officially started yet. This is just the non-airing preamble for the first couple of minutes while we wait for the signal to join the radio station. So you're over here in my YouTube chat room, or you're over on the Facebook chat room where you can see this live. You can also go over to the Facebook Odyssey radio page, the YouTube channel, or over to odysseyradio.com to hear just the audio stream of this show. Shared, thank you. Master Finn, good to see you here, brother. Glad you made it in. I'm tired tonight. I'm tired before we even walked back in the door. We were out running errands and stuff. I'm like, oh man, I'm tired. So, but that's part of this whole being under the weather the last couple of weeks. It's like, boom, man. So thank you, Donna, Renee, Ivy. I appreciate it. Sarah Nichols, how you doing? Glad to have you here. As the room will start to fill up soon. If you're new to the Intrepid family, welcome. Say hi to everybody. If you are not a member over at the YouTube channel, you can be. I haven't announced that for a long time. So if you're here on the YouTube channel, just click on the little join button. It's around here somewhere. And you can join this channel, the Intrepid Radio channel. It's my channel as well. So, yeah, there's a little fee. So you can come in for free, listen to all the shows for nothing, and watch the videos. Or there's 3 different levels you can come in at. One of these days, we'll start fulfilling the rewards that come with those different levels. So now that we're back on air again. So you can go take a look. It helps keep this show informed, studied, researched, fun, all of that stuff. Otherwise, I'd be very boring. So it's 9:03:39. We got about a minute before, a little less than a minute before we actually go live. Now, at that time, for those of you new here, when we go live, just after the 9:04 mark, it's going to go dark in here and quiet. You'll still see the header and all the ads and the streamer down below, but we go dark and quiet until the radio show starts officially. So there you go. It'll go quiet for a few seconds. Here we go, as a matter of fact. So we'll be back. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Good evening, cats and dogs, ladies and gentlemen, all you other cool cats out there. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on OdysseyRadio.com. That's ODYSY radio.com. And it's spelled differently. So you can be listening to the audio right here on Odyssey Radio, or you can go over to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, and join the Intrepid family over there in the chat room and watch the video live. Or you can also go over to Facebook, go to the Odyssey Radio page over on Facebook, and you can see the video over there and also during the chat room that's lined up in there. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thanks for lining up. Thanks for coming in. All of you over in the chat room, thank you for being here. And Matthew Sainsbury said he wasn't sure I was going to be on tonight. That might be just because we put out a late announcement instead of one earlier in the day. So you may not have seen the announcement. So maybe the same thing with some other people. That's okay. We're here. And as soon as people figure out we're here, they'll be here. We're here every night, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. out east, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and 7 p.m. Coast Time, and 6 a.m. in Great Britain and Germany and Egypt. And I think it's like 2 in the afternoon still today, earlier, over in Hawaii. But in Australia, it's already tomorrow. So we have some of our listeners from Australia that tune in, and it would be, I think, about 11 o'clock in the morning over there. Then again, Australia is a big continent, so we have some people on both ends. Some say, no, it's 14. It's a 14-hour difference, mate. No, crikey, it's only 12. And so it all depends on what time you tune in over there, what city you're in. So I just want to thank you all for being here. And how's that for introducing the show tonight? And also, I want to mention those of you who are aware of this, the Kickstarter for my new book, The Sword in the Clay. Now, that book, we've got our financier who owns Manitou Free Traders Press, is publishing the book, but he did want to see what kind of response there was for this type of historical fare, historical fiction, historical books for kids, picture books like I've done with this one. It's an illustrated book for young adults and also adults, great for parents to read to their kids. And he was going to be interested to see what the response would be like. So we've got 7 days, well, officially now 6 days left as of about 6 this evening. So 6 days on the 31st of this month, that Kickstarter campaign is done. And it's an all or nothing campaign, meaning if we don't meet the goal, we don't get the funds. So we have to meet the goal. And I assured him there are a lot of people out there that listen to this show, that follow me, that are friends of mine, that are all people that will order this book via the Kickstarter. And there's also different levels that you can look at, different rewards you can get. So go over, take a look if you haven't done so yet. And those of you here, I know who you are. And you know I know who you are. Thank you for already contributing to that effort. And if you have not, it's over there. We could sure use your help, seeing if we can bring this to a place that is, might you say, pleasing to the financiers. So we thank you in advance for that. And I know you'll like the book. We've read parts of that book on this show. I might read a little segment of it tonight for those of you who aren't familiar with it, so you can hear a little bit of the book tonight. Just because while the business side is getting you involved in wanting to be involved with the Kickstarter page, the fun side is reading the book and showing off the pictures and so on and stuff like that. So I want to thank you all in advance. And I don't know if my share is working over here yet tonight. For some reason, it wouldn't share last night. Let's see if it does it tonight. Nope, it says it's lost permissions. So I went in and reset the permissions to share my screen with the radio audience that can view it, and no can do. So we don't have a slideshow tonight, folks. Sorry. Oh. And these are the slides of my vacation. Now, you can't see the pyramid. It's way off to the left behind me. You know how it is watching people's pictures or looking at them. Or how do people show pictures anymore? Just on their phones? Because I know when I was a younger man, we didn't have the cell phone cameras. We had slideshows. Hey, everybody, come on over for drinks and watch the slides of our trip to Honduras, or whatever. So what was that, madam? No. Dumb, Rainey says. I got one earbud in, so I can only hear part of her. I only hear half of you tonight. So that's my lovely Rainey sitting out in the peanut gallery out beyond the screen of this computer. And so tonight, I am going to read a little section from this book only because, those of you who are here and have heard it before, hopefully you'll enjoy it again. I'm just going to read the very beginnings of this book tonight to give you an idea of how the book starts. And after that, we're going to go into our topic for the night and continue that on. And so The Sword in the Clay. And a story, the true story of Will Bird, who was a Canadian 42nd Battalion, Canadian Highlanders soldier fighting during World War I. And he went to war, and in 2017, after the German bombardment of the French city of Amiens, they were going through the trenches after the Allies won that battle, and he stumbles across an old sword in the mud and the clay. And he picks it up and takes it home and finds out this sword dates back to Caesar's Gallic Wars in the 50s BCE. So the sword is over 2,000 years old. And that sword is still in the museum in Halifax, Nova Scotia today at the Military Museum. But there was one thing they didn't know, and that was to whom the sword actually would have belonged. To them, obviously, a soldier dropped it somewhere, or there was it was lost. But they do know that there was a battle that took place at Amiens, France. And Amiens back in that time was known as Somarabriva, and it meant the place on the Somme River that had a bridge. And so there was a battle there because Caesar had a fort there. And so that's the basis of the story. And so I created a Roman character that's a fictional character, but that gives a plausible backstory to the sword. And so I'm going to read the opening of the book to you tonight. Just take a few minutes. And many of you have heard some of this before. If you go over to the Kickstarter page, you'll see videos that are posted there where you can hear some of this. I've also posted them on my social media, the videos, so you can hear them. But let's do this. I'll read this for you again. Hey, Matt Finn. Master Finn is in the room. And so is Paige. Good to see you, Paige. And everybody who's here, if there's anybody here I didn't say hi to, how you doing? Welcome to the show tonight. It's the Intrepid family over on the YouTube page. And you too, if you're only listening audio, go ahead and tune in either the Facebook page for Odyssey Radio or my YouTube page, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, and tune into this broadcast and you can join the live chat room here. And so the book goes like this, the opener of the book, and this sets the stage for the entire story. The world had gone mad and was at war with itself. The year was 1914, and young men from nearly every country had enlisted in armies and gone off to fight. Many would never come home from this war to end all wars. Steve Bird of the Canadian 25th Battalion was one of them. Shattered to pieces by a German mine after a year of fighting in France, far from the green rolling hills and rocky coastlines of home. Nova Scotia had truly lost one of its finest, and East Mapleton one of its favorite sons, now honored sons. And Will Bird had lost his youngest brother. William Richard Bird, Will to his family and friends, had been working on a farm in Saskatchewan, nearly 2,500 miles from home, when the telegram bearing news of his little brother's death reached him. Though he honored his brother's sacrifice, he was gutted to the core. Dad's passing from pneumonia years before had been bad enough, but he thought he would always have his little brother. Overwhelmed, Will let the telegram fall to the floor. The words were just too uncanny. Only a few days before, while working far out in the fields, Will had seen what had seemed to be a ghostly apparition of Steve, dressed in his uniform. Blinking hard, Will had quickly dismissed the vision as a trick of the eyes and the rays of sunlight glinting off the wheat. Receiving the tragic news, though, he was less certain that it hadn't been real. Will immediately dropped his harvesting tools and hopped a train back to East Mapleton. Even though the harvesting money was good and he had hoped to return home with $300, a goodly sum for a season's work, none of that mattered now. Steve was gone, and his death threw out over the excitement and exuberance Will had felt when he had left on what was known nationally as the National Harvest Excursion to Western Canada. Life back home in East Mapleton had been good, sweet, and quaintly provincial, but after pneumonia took his father, Will had decided that the best thing to do was go west, harvesting crops on the wide prairies to help support his family and widowed mother. A year earlier, his brother Steve had left his architectural draftsman trade and enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Forces to fight in the burgeoning conflict in Europe. A proud young man willing to die for his country. The train ride over the great expanse of Canadian prairie seemed an eternity. He just wanted it to be done and over. But as the time clickety-clacked away, Will mulled over his options for what to do next. By the time he disembarked the train in Nova Scotia, Will had determined to honor his brother and his country by taking Steve's place and enlisting with the Canadian Expeditionary Forces, the 42nd Battalion, the Royal Highlanders of Canada, who were redesignated as the Black Watch after the war. At the outbreak of the war, Will had attempted to enlist alongside Steve, but he'd been turned down due to his hockey teeth, which he had broken while participating in Canada's favorite sport. Like it or not, as the oldest, you're the family patriarch, Steve had said to Will as they stepped off the front porch and into the yard to catch the late afternoon sun. Broken teeth or no, leave the job of soldiering up to me. You stay right here and take care of mother and family matters. Why should you risk your life and have all the adventure while I stay back and mind the store, so to speak? Steve replied good-naturedly. Besides, with me over there, this war would be over much quicker. What are you going to do? Gum the Germans to death? Steve let out a hoot at his joking insult. They're broken, Will retorted in equally good nature. Not missing, he grabbed Steve in a headlock, the move he had always used to establish his older brother's superiority since they were kids. The brothers tumbled to the ground in faux scuffling, laughing uproariously as each attempted to pin the other's shoulders to the dirt. Will, who had always seemed to win in these mock conflicts, ended up on the top, straddling Steve's ribcage as he finally forced his younger brother's shoulders down. You're getting tougher, soldier boy, Will puffed out of breath from the wrestle. But you'll never be tougher than me. I let you win that time, old man, Steve came back with, the only insult he could think of. They both laughed as Will let up his pinhold and sat back, his knees still on either side of Steve's chest. He grew quiet and said with all sincerity, I want to be there to protect you, watch over you. That's what a big brother's supposed to do. Maybe I'd have to watch over you, Steve laughed and sputtered out the word you as he pushed up on Will's knees and sent him rolling off into the grass. Draw, draw, Will yelled out, putting his hands up in the air, then stood and grabbed Steve's hands, hefting him to his feet. I don't want to lose you, little brother, Will said, throwing his arms around Steve's shoulders. I won't be there with you, and I want you to come home. Steve pushed Will back and held his shoulders out at arm's length, looking his older brother straight in the eyes. Steve's voice was calm and firm. I assure you, brother, I'll fight bravely, and I'll live to return to the glorious welcome home parade that you're sure to throw for me, he said, and then grinned broadly. But if for any reason I do not make it home from the war, maybe I'll find a way somehow to come back and whisper in your ear. The brothers embraced tightly, slapping each other on the back as young men are wont to do. Nearly 6 months to the day after Steve's death, with his bonnet on his head and his kilt about his knees, Will set foot for the first time on French soil. Having agreed to get his teeth fixed, he was finally permitted to enlist, feeling the full weight of duty and honor and self-sacrifice, discipline and obedience. Most young men, stepping into foreign war for the first time, believed military service would be glorious, life-shaping adventure. And in Canada, part of the British Empire, the glory was all for God, king, and country. For Will's part, he believed he owed it to his lost brother. And that, folks, is the opening to The Sword in the Clay. And that is the book that you can go make sure that you avail yourself of today. Go over to the Kickstarter, and it's a $30 price for the book, $29.95. We just rounded it up 5 cents to $30. And there's different levels at which you can support that cause. And that helps show our publisher that you are interested, that there are people interested out there in seeing this kind of book written and created, more of this kind of thing. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that, and hope to see you over on the Kickstarter page. We had 6 days left to fund this project. So there you go. What a tease, says Matt Finn. I don't know if you're talking to me or somebody else, but I'll take that. It was a tease. Unless it was Paige that's teasing. I have no idea. Hey, Paige, it's a little less tropical here in Southwest Michigan, says Matt Finn. So everybody who's joining, Michelle Cannon-Free, I see you over there. Sean Stroik, good to see you. Michelle Cannon-Free, I just said that. Matt Finn, everybody, welcome to the show. And those of you I can't see, those of you over listening to the audio at odysseyradio.com, welcome to the program. Those of you on Facebook, welcome to the show as well. So tonight, we're going to carry on this kind of side topic we got into out of doing the main topic. For those of you new to this show, what we have traditionally done with the Intrepid radio program is I choose topics. I rarely just have one-offs, meaning a topic for the night and we go to a different topic tomorrow night. Sometimes we do. Sometimes there's something paranormal or ufological or political or whatever it might be, and we'll do one-off topics. But for the most part, I like to choose longer mini series that we can get into and dig into a topic a little deeper. Some of the ones that stand out for me have been the Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, where we took, I think, almost 5 weeks to do the whole series based on Dee Brown's book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which was a Native American perspective of the conquering of the American West. And we did that series. We did a series on being awake and being aware, Gnosticism and mysticism, Gnostic Christianity, pagan Christianity we went into for a mini series once. And also looking into the war between original Christianity, Gnostic mystical Christianity, and literalist Orthodox Christianity, which eventually won the war and ended up being what we would know by the end of the 2nd century as the Roman Catholic Church. And so we've studied all these histories, mysteries, religious mysteries, world mysteries, science, and all of these different things. So every now and then we have a good little series or one-shots on psychological topics. And so we had started at the beginning of last week with the relaunch of this show, talking about self-esteem of all things, only because I think self-esteem is one of those things we've heard so much about, we forget about what it actually really means. And what does it mean to have self-esteem? What does it mean to trust your own self? What does it mean to be awake about trusting yourself, about giving to life in action that which you know you believe in your heart? There's many people who operate out of low or very poor self-esteem. And when that happens, they bring a lot of that to their actions in life. And it permutates into everything that they do in life. And so we started talking about that, and we got off on a little side shot on happiness, because there was somebody who frequents the chat room who had some questions about happiness. And we're more than happy to engage anybody that's got legitimate questions about anything. And it really kind of side railed us into saying, let's look into this a little deeper. So we started a bit last night, and now back into it again a little bit tonight. I want to talk about the science of happiness. And if you saw the weird title for tonight's show, while viable happiness can feel like an amorphous concept, science has explored key pieces of the experience. And that's kind of what I want to get into a little bit tonight with this. The psychology of, the science of happiness. And as I stated in the title, although happiness can feel like an amorphous concept, science has explored key pieces of the experience, such as which choices, which activities, mindsets lead to fulfillment, common misunderstandings of happiness, and theories that may explain the origin and the attainment of well-being. And so I want us to look at these things. What are the things that make people happy? Is happiness a real thing? Is it something we can latch into? What are some of the myths about happiness? We looked at a little bit of that last night. What are the theories of happiness? If we have time, we'll get into as much of that as we can. But first, let's kind of backtrack and go to the basics of happiness. Or as I remember this from, I surprised a buddy of mine and called him. I hadn't talked to him in a few months. and he happens to be a friend of mine, two buddies of mine and I, back in 2005, the same year I met my wife, Rainey. So it was just before we had met. These two buddies of mine and I, we took a trip to Great Britain, to England, as we said, and England and Wales. And we rented a car for 2 weeks. And all we did, the three of us adults, and I was the old man even then. At that time, I was 44 years old, and these guys were both in their late 20s, early 30s. And now they're as old as I was back then. So I told them, how's it feel being old? But we took a trip, rented a car. We stayed all bed and breakfasts. And we had, and all we did was we castle hopped and pub hopped in England for 2 weeks. Any little town. Hey, Ryan Gale, good to see you over there in the chat room. Anytime we saw a placard for when we stopped in a town and we wanted to walk through, say, Stratford upon Avon, we stopped there and we went and saw Kenilworth Castle in Stratford. And we went downtown Stratford upon Avon. We saw Shakespeare's house there, Anne Hathaway's cottage. I think that was right there in town as well. And we just walked around town, the old medieval to Renaissance period sections of town. The whole place is historical. And every time we said we see a placard for a pub, we're stopping for a half pint. And so we did that and had a great time with that. And we castle hopped everywhere we saw a great castle to stop into. And along the way, as we're driving through the fields, we had gone to Glastonbury and we saw Glastonbury Tor and all the things associated with the Arthurian legends and witchcraft that rise up out of Glastonbury. And there was a sign on one place that you could go visit Bababji. Bababji, and we made a joke out of it. Bababji was a guru, Eastern Indian, as we say, dot no feather, Indian, that gave out psychic advice and guru type of advice. And so one day while we're driving, and some people might think this is insensitive and racist. I don't. Because we were having great fun with it. But I just one day while it was quiet in the car and we're driving along a couple of hours to get somewhere, I go, I say, Bababji has a message for my fine friends. And they started laughing. And what's your message for us, Bababji? And I said, well, the first thing I want you to know is not fulfilled without a penis. And they looked for a second and started cracking up. And I said, yes, a penis is that thing that comes from the middle of yourself. And it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. Your penis can get so big that others may not be able to handle you coming into the room. And so we went on and on talking about a penis, happiness. And so that was in Glastonbury where that began. But that's what comes to mind whenever I talk about happiness. But so all that story just to give you that. So what makes people happy is the first question. Getting back to the basics of it. How do you find happiness? Finding satisfaction and contentment is a continual process in human existence. Psychologists have now identified many of the tenets that help individuals along that journey. Happiness incorporates curiosity, the ability to tolerate risk and anxiety, to discover new passions and facets of identity. So, I saw Michelle Cannon Free. Is that your reaction to all that? Eh? The geeks call it a phallus, says Matthew Sainsbury. There it is. Oh, the Greeks. There you go. Well, the Eastern Indians like Bababji call it a penis. So let's see. Moving on. I don't know if you caught that because of the language barrier, Matthew Sainsbury. So there you go. It's a pronunciation issue. So happiness involves this balance that we have to maintain between momentary pleasure and longer-term striving toward our goals. It's abetted by friends and family who can both celebrate accomplishments and provide support after our failures. Happiness includes the ability to acknowledge and embrace every emotion, even the unpleasant ones. We can embrace those things because we strive and nurture our happiness. It involves seeking the big picture rather than getting stuck in the details. Overall, being happy is to love and live with mindfulness, meaning, and purpose. Mindfulness, meaning, and purpose. That seems so basic, it almost doesn't need to be said. But those are the basics about happiness. What is happiness? It's the ability to live with mindfulness, meaning, and purpose. I would add in there on a spiritual level to add in being awake and being aware that you are awake, that we are not bowled over by the little things in life, by the downs in life, because we've all got them. Mindfulness, meaning, and purpose. And so, is it possible then, the question comes out, in light of those being the things that build happiness on a basic, almost rudimentary level, is it possible to find lasting happiness? That's stuff that lasts for a long time, for life. And the key to lifelong happiness is the taking of time to cultivate small tweaks on a regular basis. It incorporates habits into your daily life, such as, I don't know, you can keep a gratitude journal. I don't. I'm horrible at keeping a journal. You know what this radio show is and what it's been for the last, well, since almost 20 years since I started doing radio. You know what it is for me? This is my journal. This is who I am. If anybody is interested in knowing anything about who I am, my great-grandchildren onward, all they have to do is find my old radio shows, and they'll find out an awful lot about me. I have very few written things down, although I've written books and I've written articles and things like that. It's a little different than a journal. So, do you keep a gratitude journal of any kind? It sounds so sing-songy, but are you grateful for the things you have in life? Are you practicing kindness? Do you nurture optimism and a positive outlook? Do you learn to forgive? Do you invest in your relationships? Do you find flow activities? Do you avoid overthinking? Savoring life's joys? Do you commit to goals? Because committing to goals can make happiness a permanent fixture. And you have to ask, are happy people born happy? Some people, we know, are naturally more optimistic, positive, and content. Although genetics is, in fact, a key determinant of happiness, people who gravitate toward pessimism are able to change their outlook to an extent by reframing negative thoughts and preventing self-criticism. So we can look at what influences happiness the most. Are people less happy than past generations? These are big questions we can ask and wonder about whether or not these are the things that actually work for us. Are these the things that build? What influences happiness over the most? Our genes may be what influences happiness the most. Behavioral geneticists and psychologists attribute about 50% of our happiness to genetics, 10% to life circumstances, and 40% to personal choices. Even if people aren't born with a bright outlook committing to improving happiness on a regular basis, that can make a difference. Can I help you, small child, interrupting my radio show? Okay, why don't you go in and go to bed? I'm so sorry to hear that. You shouldn't be out here while I'm doing live radio telling me that. You can tell me later when I'm done. There you go, folks. Familial interlude for something that my small child would not tell me if she didn't know I had an audience watching. So there you go. And moving on. Are people less happy now, do you think, than in past generations? Children and teens today, they have higher expectations for their life. Why is that? Did we teach them those higher expectations? Or do they pick those up because we are a society that thrives and dwells and exists on social media, on high-tech information that comes out? It's at their fingertips like it's never been before. Like I mentioned the other day, my 10-year-old daughter coming home from school almost in tears, asking me about nuclear war. Now, we knew some of that stuff when I was a kid and that age, but not to the extent they know it today. So, do they have higher expectations? Income inequality and other factors make achieving success more difficult for some of them. They've become more aware of that. We were poor when I was growing up. We just didn't know it. Additionally, more people value wealth over relationship than they did previously in previous generations, which can lead to diminished happiness in adulthood. So these reasons and others may be why adults are less happy than they used to be. Matthew Sainsbury says, I think so. Unhappiness, let's see if I can get that to show. There it is. Unhappiness is on the rise since the pandemic. Maybe a little bit. I think it's what you choose to believe about the pandemic. We all were closely affected by the pandemic, but we get up and we move on. You can almost apply the success is just getting up and brushing yourself off after failure after failure. That was kind of a paraphrase of an Abraham Lincoln quote. Matt Finn says traffic is a buzzkill, something about being stuck in it when all you want to do is fly. There it is, Brother Finn. TikTok poisons their minds. That's true with my kids. I look at the behavior of my kids some days. Even from, I've got 3 older kids that the youngest of them, Sam, my 21-year-old boy, then my 30-year-old twin daughters. Those 3 grew up in an even slightly different mindset and generation than my younger 3, my 12, 10, and 7-year-old. And that difference in there, that 10, 11 to 12-year difference in there, or my oldest now, 12 to 30, my daughters. What is that? That's 18 years difference. In that 18 years difference between those births, what's happened with our world and our technology? Our kids, Rennie's and my 3 little kids, they grew up in a... Sorry. It's that cough that just attacks me out of nowhere. Our kids grow up now in a very different kind of world than my older kids grew up in. My older kids are at most 18 years older than my son, Flynn. So you could almost call that a generation in between them. So, yeah, everybody's grown up a little differently. TikTok now poisons the minds of my little kids the way it didn't, because it didn't exist when my 3 older kids were around. We used to say back then, rock and roll music. That's why our kids are, my generation, my mother before me, who was born in 1942 and grew up, came of age in the 1950s. It was that rock and roll, and, the hip shaking, hip twisting, Blue Moon, all of that stuff. That's the stuff they grew up on. And their parents were like, these kids are going to turn out rotten. Look at the music they listen to. Well, look what our kids are exposed to now. My own little 3 kids, my 12-year-old son is off at a friend's tonight. The two little girls, they're back there and they're joking around with us, with mom and dad, about saying things about F this and it's like, hey, you don't talk about that stuff. My little girl just came out here. I was basically ignoring her because I knew she was here to tattle on her older sister.
She wasn't going to tattle. She hit her head on the door and she's got a huge egg. She just wanted to show you.
Oh, well, she hit her head, apparently, according to Rainey. The first thing she said to me, though, Rowan flipped me off and this, and I'm like, God, go. Just go back to bed. Okay? And so that stuff goes on all the time, but they're always complaining about, she flipped me off, so I kicked her in the knees. And it's like, I guess, conflict is always taking place between kids. Sibling rivalry has not changed over the millennia. But the things that the way they talk to us sometimes, Rainey and I look at each other and say, I would never have dreamt of saying anything like that to my parents. And so there are things you have to pull the plug on in family and life. Anyway, so you get it. I think I made the point I was going after. Kids are experiencing different things nowadays than they used to. We got 10 minutes left of the show. Let's see where else we can get with this. What are some of the myths about happiness? We had Niall, who was in the chat room the other night, who insisted that happiness isn't a real thing. Now, is that a myth, or is happiness itself a myth? That's kind of what led into wanting to talk about this a little bit more. So what are the myths about happiness? People often want to avoid difficult emotions, so they reach for these quick fixes like tasty treats, luxurious purchases, a nice bottle of scotch. That'll bring me happiness. Those indulgences provide happiness, but only momentarily. They're transitory. They're passing things. Is that really happiness? Or are those the things we do? They're like the salve on a gaping wound. Here, you got this thing that's going bad. You got this open wound. Let me slap a little salve on that. Be happy now. And we do that to ourselves. So those indulgences provide happiness, but they're just momentary. Yet pinning all hopes of happiness on milestones like getting married, gaining fame, becoming wealthy is also misleading. Sorry, I got to take a drink, folks. Hold on. It's not that carbonated, sugar-free Coke should do anything other than wet my whistle. It doesn't really take away the cough. My throat is so dry, especially when I talk, that just attacks me out of nowhere. So, lasting happiness occurs when we invest in meaningful goals, in meaningful relationships, values, developing skills, and overcoming distress. When I was a younger man, happiness was, the conquest. Happiness was the one-night stand. Happiness was making a buck here and there. Happiness was doing this, that, and the other thing. But I think I started learning at a very early age that happiness comes in different ways. This self-esteem that all of this is coming out of, the talk about self-esteem. I was thinking about that today. I didn't have very high self-esteem at all when I was a younger man. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust any decisions I made. And I was like a flapping sock in the wind because, I didn't know which way to turn or what to do, and I would go the way the wind blew. And I was always worried about what other people thought about what I should do, how I should act, and all of those things. And it took a very long time for me to overcome that stuff. But I thought I was gaining happiness by all these passing things that I would invest myself in. So, but they didn't really develop anything lasting. So, at least not for the long run. Morgan Snow, welcome to the show. Good to have you here over in the chat room. And what else we got going on? I just want to stop and take a look at the chat room for a second. Let's see. See what all we have over here. Everything is by design, says Sean Stroik. He said all of this is theater. And maybe in a certain extent, to a certain degree, you might be right. Iowa X says being happy will pass like gas. And you know what? Maybe some of us have that outlook in life. Maybe we've allowed life to bitch slap us so much that the end outcome for us is that life is not happy. I used to say, and it was a saying of mine, I've said it on the show before, I had a core belief that pretty much said life is actually a piece of shit that will, by natural entropy, devolve into nothingness unless you find ways to cope with the things that are problems for you. And those are really a belief system like that was something that I had going for me that helped me develop and get out of that thinking and thinking life is just shitty. And it's what you do with it that matters. So left to itself, I used the illustration of washing dishes, I think last night or the night before. If you just stopped washing the dishes, oversimplistic illustration, I realize, but if you just stop washing your dishes in your house, how long before that kitchen sink becomes overrun with dirty dishes? How long before all the dishes in your house are used up? How about all the dishes used up over and twice over, and you have no silverware left or anything like that, or flatware, whatever you want to call it? And pretty soon you're eating what? Out of the palm of your hand or off the countertop, which is strewn with dirty dishes. Everything starts to stink. And after a while, you can see how the devolution takes place. You got to stop one day and start washing a dish. And what gives you a better outlook on that never happening again? It's not that it once happened or maybe twice happened. It's that you're doing the cognitive things to prevent that from happening again. And so you maintain the happiness of clean dishes in a clean kitchen by doing the work it takes to keep it that way. So happiness is work, definitely. Yeah, good paper plates work. Disposable happiness, we'll call that. So do you have disposable happiness in hand? And of course, we could extend the illustration in any absurd way we want to after that. And talking about how you run out of money for paper plates, or we've deforested the earth with our usage of paper plates, and we still have to go back and clean our plates off. So anyway, it's an illustration. You get it. Yeah, you buy the good ones. Good paper china. I get it. I know what you use. And we're swiftly running out of time in this program tonight. But you get where I'm going with that. So the biggest myths are people often believe that accomplishments like marriage, wealth, these things are going to bring all this lasting happiness into our lives. Adverse experiences such as divorce, disease, they're going to bring unremitting sadness. But research reveals that bursts of happiness or sadness tied to specific life events are usually fairly short. We're fairly resilient as human beings. We get over those things. Thoughts like, I'll be happy when I get married, or I'll never recover from this diagnosis, they all turn out to be misrepresentations and sometimes misconceptions on our part. So, can people predict what will make them happy? Can you predict what will make you happy? People are surprisingly bad at anticipating their future happiness. They tend to overestimate how joyous or upsetting events are going to be. A promotion won't provide the unending fulfillment. A breakup will not be the hopeless, endless, wrist-slitting tragedy. People also recall experiences by the beginning, end, and intense or peak moments, rather than by the experience as a whole. Even now, as gut-wrenching and horrendous as it was to go through the custody battle and the divorce with my ex-wife, who I had my 3 first children with. I still remember some of the high points and the good points of that marriage. I also remember some of the very negative, lowest points. So we remember a lot of things. Do more choices make us happier? It's logical to believe that more choices do, but they can lead people to stress out about the decisions they'd have to make and wonder about the lost alternatives. This is referred to as the paradox of choice. So, are people who win the lottery happier? No, we all know the answer to that. They feel more secure, fortunate, and happy, but it's still short-lived. When they spend their money or basic necessities or moderate consumption, they can feel better for a time. So, folks, we got to end it there. We got theories of happiness we'll talk about tomorrow night, but we might not even hit this at all. We might get into something else tomorrow night for the fun of it, something a little different. So what, because tomorrow's Friday. So what I want you to do now, since we're closing in on the end of this show, I would like you to stick around if you're in the chat room. We'll be right back. And you know what? I just want to say, live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
All right, guys, we're back. We're still here. We never went away. We're just off the air now over at Odyssey Radio. And so I want to thank you all for being here. And it's a big topic, happiness. I try to handle what we have to handle with this topic as we're talking about it. I'm looking at the clock because I got to turn us off now from our connection to the stream. There we go. And I'm going to unplug my headset because I don't like wearing it. So if you're still sticking around over there in the chat room, we're here for a little bit. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I was tired before the show began. So I'm not going to last too much longer. But I'm going to turn my chat room back on over here so I can see you all and what everybody's saying. So grab a pint half full, says Sean Stroik, and be happy. Take care, Intrep heads. See you, Sean Stroik. If you're going, oh, you're still here. Good. Stick around. And Morgan Snow, you speak about revolution, choice, and they're not the main problem. Oh, okay, you're addressing Sean. Now, I didn't see what Sean had to say. Time to remind politicians that they're servants of the people. I think they forget that, Sean. I really do. I have to agree with you there. It's time to remind them. Who's the boss? It ain't the politicians. But they sure act like they are, don't they? And yeah, you're right. Get rid of most choices, says Iowa X. I don't know if that's in relation to what Sean said or to something else. Almost there, my brother. Almost. Every day we give them less rocks to hide under. Well, that's true. As it should be. So let's see what else we got here. I'm just looking back through the chat room. Going backwards in time here. It's like time travel. Let's see. Oh, I was talking to Rainey today and saying, wouldn't it be neat? We're talking about time travel, but it wasn't the topic per se. I said, I had seen a bunch of shows on archaeology of ancient Rome. There's a woman who does a series on YouTube, and I think it was for the BBC, but British woman, and she's talking about life in Rome. She's an anthropologist and an archaeologist, and so she took us all through these tours through places in Rome in her shows, a big 3-parter. I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she was talking about, she said, so many of us know so much of the history of the famous people in Rome, Roman history. She said, "What about the common folk?" And she started talking about the common people, and she was looking at grave markers from ancient Rome, first couple of centuries, and the things that they had to say when they were dying, the kind of people they were, freed. So how much of the population was slaves, but how much of that slave population became emancipated slaves and became Roman citizens and then took on jobs and the kinds of professions they had. She said, like going to ancient Rome, the city, over 1 million people. What was that city like 2,000 years ago when there was no generator for electricity, no running water or sewage like we know it today? Yeah, they're ancient forms, of course. Um, and I was saying, wouldn't it be interesting? Because I was watching this thing on Pompeii, her show on Rome, and another one on Pompeii, where they were talking about um, the studio. Anybody still here? Nope. Everybody's gone. Oh, nope. There's still 7 people, it says here. Sorry, our internet cut out. That's the cheap, tawdry internet we have in our small town back here. It never ceases to piss me off. I'm just thankful it didn't do that during the live broadcast, but it did do it during the our after show here. So we're lifers, Captain, says Michelle Canham Free. Yep, I was just our internet just glitched out for no reason, which is it is wont to do. And then it's out for a few minutes and it comes back up. Doesn't care what you're doing or when you're doing it. I'd say every day since we moved into this part of town, well, this little town, Somerset, every day, at least once a day, this internet cuts out at some point unannounced. So they have the worst internet I have ever had to use. But because we're a small town and they have the monopoly in our small town on the internet and what companies can come on here, we don't have any other companies in this town other than the local internet company, Northwest Cable. And you can get satellite internet out here, but you can't get Comcast, Xfinity, AT&T, which you can pick up all of those about 11 and a half miles that way when you hit the Minnesota border. So, and you're in the outskirts of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Can you get them over here 11 miles further into the state of Wisconsin? No, because they own the monopoly here. So, anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about, but that's okay. I was tired. Now I'm tired and pissed off. So that's just the way it goes. It has stolen my happiness. I was talking about going back in time to Rome. And did you like that? That was unannounced too. So that's what I get for drinking carbonated drink during a radio show. So I always thought it would be, I said to Rainey tonight, wouldn't it be cool if we could go back in time to ancient Rome and just walk around and eat food at some of the fast food places by 2,000-year-old Roman standards? And they had them, little corner shops. You can see even in Pompeii, where it was all covered up, so it was perfectly preserved, and they uncovered it. The counters with the round holes drilled in the tops for pots that would go in there and heat up, keep the food warm, and people could run by there and grab a quick bite to eat, and throw their coin on the table and get their fast food and go. And I was watching an archaeology show where they were talking about, even more recently, talking about recreating some of the Roman food that existed. And they had a chef that specialized in finding old recipes from Rome 2,000 years ago and recreating some of the recipes that they would have for their fast food joints. And people think it would be really weird stuff. And they did have some really weird stuff, like fish-headed, jellified, gross pottage that was fermented for 3 weeks, like kimchi of dead fish or something. That I could live without that. It was a sauce and they dip bread in it and stuff like that. But there was also all kinds of foods that they created that were very spicy, very robust flavors to everything, the way it was prepared. And these modern day chefs went into their specialty was anthropological study of foods eaten back in that period. And the archaeology applied was interpreting the ancient recipes that were used, finding the spices that were used. And I guess it was a pretty robust, flavorful food that was all over ancient Rome. And of course, there was no gluten in anything, so you were good there. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting just to go back in time, go back hungry, and wander around Rome at lunchtime on a Tuesday afternoon, and pick up food at the vendors at the corner fast food joints. The one in Pompeii had gladiators painted all over the walls of this fast food place on the corner. And the thing that was cool about it was, like, I don't know, gladiatorial games food or something like that, whatever the name of the place was. And it sounds, actually pretty appealing and pretty cool. So let's see. Let me put on my glasses so I can see some of your comments. Yeah, ancient Romans liked Chinese, says Barbie D. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they did. They had a fish sauce called garum, says Matthew Sainsbury. That's cool. Sugar. Yeah, I'm sure they had sugar. Michelle Canham Free, 10, 11, 11, 11. I have no idea. You just calling out the clock, maybe? Something like that. It's 10:12 here. So the famous mosaic of Alexander the Great defeating Darius 111 of Persia, Darius III, probably you mean, of Persia in 333 BC. Comes from a house that was buried in Pompeii. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Not a restaurant or a fast food joint in ancient Rome, but a house. You're right, Matthew. Let's see. Make a wish, says Michelle Canham Free. I'd like to buy a good Scottish meat pie, says You Don't Know Me Mom. Yeah, me too. That'd be fantastic. So I'll bet it is, Matthew, a cool mosaic. I've probably seen it, although I'm not calling it to mind right now. There's a great mural in a house. Is it the one you're talking about with the gardens? It's basically dark green and it has birds and plants painted in. You don't think of these murals back then as being so detailed. Some of that stuff is incredibly lifelike. The portraiture is incredibly, almost what we would call nowadays photorealistic. Amazing stuff back then. I could go back and get stranded in ancient Rome and figure out a living. Go into advertising, sign painting, mural painting, so and so, bring back that knowledge to back then. That'd be kind of fun in a weird sort of fun way. Field Guy says, I have the same problem with Charter. They have Monopoly. It goes out sometimes and I'm streaming. Yep. That's just thankful it didn't go out earlier tonight when I was actually streaming to the radio station. So that stuff makes me mad. It's like, come on. Don't we pay you enough? So, anyway, going back in time on our stream, on our chat room, looking at past chat tonight. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, said John Stroik. Was that when I disappeared? So I'm glad you stuck around, guys, those of you who stayed here. Let's see. All right, folks, I think you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get out of here. I got to go to bed. I got up at 5 this morning and was like, crap, I don't want to be awake. But I looked at my my Fitbit software, and I had slept like 4 hours and 23 minutes, and I thought, that's about par. And so I got up, but I was tired right away, showered, got dressed, had some coffee, and said, screw this, I'm going back to bed. Went back to bed. No, I came down here and I did work. And then I told Rainey finally at about 9:30, something like that. I said, I got to go back to bed. That's the way we have been off and on for the last couple of weeks with whatever it is that ails us right now, hence the coughing and all of that. So, and me tired all the time. I did that to Rainey last week. So we're just like dragging along. And I'm going to go to bed and see if I can't sleep a little bit tonight. So, glad to make the party at least. Scotty says, Barbie D, were you here early tonight, Barbie, or did you not come until the end? So, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, hey, Michelle, did Sean S. actually go back to ancient Rome? So we don't know. We'll have to talk about that one of these times. I know that there are people who have made claims to having had traveled back in time. Are they crackpots, or is there something to what they have to say? We'll have to look into that. So, all right, guys, you have a good night. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go to bed. And you live long and prosper. I love you all. Thanks for being here. See ya. Bye. So long. Where's my button? There it is. Bye.